there, books, welcome back to my channel. Today we're here to continue our ManBooker series. I've been reading and reviewing all the books that have won the ManBooker Prize in its 51-year history. Today we're going to talk about J.G. Farrell's Troubles. This is the beginning of a trilogy. The book was published in 1970, but it wasn't awarded the ManBooker Prize until 2000s because in 1971 the prize changed its eligibility rules. So in the first 2 years of the award being given, books that were considered were books that had been published in the previous year. In 1971 they changed the rules, so they only wanted to look at books that were published in the current year, and so books that had been published in 1970 were not considered for either award. And it took 40 years for someone influential enough to revisit that and say maybe we should have looked at some of those books. And so J.G. Farrell's Troubles made it onto a long list of I think 22 books, and eventually from popularity vote this is the book that won the award, and it was given lost the ManBooker Prize in 2010, but technically since it was published in 1970 and my goal was to read the books in the order of their publication, I read this as the third book in the series, and so that's why I'm presenting it to you now. So Troubles by J.G. Farrell is the beginning of what's called an Empire trilogy, where Farrell wrote about the British Empire and the effect that it had on different countries. And in this one the book is set in Ireland because we're looking at the relationship between the British Empire and Ireland. The book is set in 1919. This is at the period at the end of World War I. And our main character is Major Brendan Archer, who's been serving in the military and has come home at the end of the war and is now trying to start out his affairs. And on a brief leave home in 1916, the Englishman Major Archer meets an Irish woman named Angela Spencer. She's visiting England, staying with friends or family, and they have a brief encounter, a romantic tryst of some sort. And when he returns to war, they continue a letter correspondence where she sends him very detailed letters telling him about her life, about her family, about the family's hotel in Ireland. Eventually through that exchange, building up an intimacy to the point where she starts calling herself his fiancée. And Major Archer isn't so sure that he wants a fiancée, so after the war is over in 1919, he returns to England, but then makes his way to Kilnalaw, Ireland to sort out this whole engagement mess, because Angela Spencer, I mean, he saw her once 3 years ago. Does he want to be married to her? So he makes his way to Kilnalaw and takes up residence almost in her family hotel. And of course, because this is 1919 and the end of World War I, but also the beginning of the Irish revolt against the British Empire and the monarchy, as well as the division between Catholics and Protestants and the escalation of that separation, we get a lot of the political changes and how they're affecting the people, how they're affecting the characters. And so the book includes a lot of the political unrest as well as the effect it has on all the characters in this novel. The setting for the book is the Majestic Hotel. This is the Spencer family hotel in Kilnalaw, and while it did have a period of its majestic presence, that harkened back to the late 1800s. And so now the hotel, it still has all these many rooms, but it's being inhabited by old people who used to visit and used to stay there for extended periods and have gotten used to the place. And so now, even though the building is crumbling around them and there isn't the majestic aura that the name suggests, they continue to be there, they continue to live there, and the entire presence, the entire surroundings is one of decay, is one of crumbling what used to be majesty. It used to be regal and royal and attractive, but is now on a slow journey towards death. Major Archer, even though he's now retired from official military service, he has decided to retain his official title. And so throughout the book, he is called Major, which harkens to the British military continuing its role in Ireland, even though he's not quite part of the official resistance. There is some overlap in authority, but we'll come to that later. And so Major, like many of the residents in the hotel, finds himself staying there, trying to pursue Angela, because even though she has sent him all these intimate details, he starts to find out that one, she excluded a lot of details that were significant that she just didn't reveal. Like she never told him about her brother who lives there and who becomes a source of antagonism for the Major. She also omitted a lot of the details about her family's declining status, but no problem. Major decides to take up residence in the hotel and try to pursue Angela just to have a conversation with her to clear up this whole engagement mess. And over time, it's revealed that Angela seems to be avoiding him for one reason or another. And even though their engagement is officially short-lived, the Major finds himself continuing to stay in the hotel even after he leaves and goes to take care of business and returns. His time away from the Majestic, and indeed his time away from Ireland, is pretty short-lived. And so while he has maintained his military title, even though Major is now a civilian, he continues to be the extension of the British monarchy, the extension of the British military in this Irish community, in this Irish household. And he becomes a symbol of the escalating unrest that seems to start with him and Angela being at odds at what their relationship is, but carrying over to what is happening with the other members of this large, unusual household, as well as what is happening in the community. And if you know something about the Irish Republic and the beginnings of the IRA and the struggle for Irish independence, then this book becomes not just an interesting read of characters pursuing their own loves and their own personal ambitions, but the characters and their situations and their surroundings all become symbols of the world around them and the period of unrest that followed or that led into this Irish struggle for independence. And there's a lot about the book that is symbolic. The characters, their love situations, their setting, everything about the surroundings and the people and where they live, and the crumbling edifice of the Majestic Hotel that was supposed to house all these myriad of people, but is being attacked both from the outside and inside. We see the evidence of the tropical vines that are taking root, which also hints at the British Empire losing some of its influence in places like India and the colonies across the world. This is not necessarily a book that you just read for entertainment, even though it is very entertaining, because it can be a struggle to just keep up with the ramble of one thing after another. Each scene is described in such vivid detail that you can't help but feel like you are there, except in the way it's being described, you're not sure that this is a place that you really want to be because of the decay and the crumbling and the slow death that's happening around you. And in fact, over the course of the novel, several characters die, but even as people are succumbing to death, we also have the resurgence of people who seem like they should have been written off, but somehow emerge from ineptitude, emerge from impotence, emerge from disability. In the story, we have a character who starts off being described as being disabled. She's confined to a wheelchair. She's being described as being very unattractive, although she's being described by that by someone who's an antagonist in the story. But in any case, she is introduced to the reader as being wheelchair bound. And over the course of the novel, she experiences what seems to be a miraculous healing, where she now is able to walk. She starts to be being described as being more vital, as being more beautiful, and in fact she's the person that our main character falls in love with. And because of what this young woman represents, she's Irish, she's Catholic, and so she's the person who, while everything else seems to be decaying around these characters, she's the person, she's the character, she's the symbol of what is moving from disabled, handicapped status to new power. And so a lot of this book describes the beginnings of the Irish Republic and its breakaway from the British Empire. This is a really great book to personalize a part of history that I confess I don't know that much about. And so as I recommend this book to you, because I am recommending it to you, I'm also recommending that before you read the book, you also do a quick read. If you're not familiar with the Irish Republic history, that you do a quick Wikipedia search about the Irish Republic and its struggle to get its own independence from the British monarchy, and what that was like, what the separation between Catholic and Protestant was like in Ireland, the IRA and the Sinn Féin groups that emerged during this period, The novel includes newspaper snippets, newspaper articles that detail some of the things that are happening, some of the incidences of unrest that characterize this time. And while some of these details, I'm sure, are fictionalized, they do represent a real period of history. So I think it's important to know a little bit about the real history so that you can appreciate the fictionalization in this novel. So this is J.G. Farrell's novel from 1970, Troubles, it is called. The troubles are personal, they're political, they are internal struggles. This is a really, really great book. It took a while for me to read it. I encourage you, if you're going to read it, that you set aside some time to really get immersed. This is a book where if your mind wanders, you might move away from the story and find yourself rereading pages just to get back to where you left off. But I love the characters in this novel. I love what they represented, but I also love their bumbling way of dealing with the crumbling edifice, the crumbling relationships, their desire for things that are just not available to them, and what they do with their energy, what they do when their desires are still unfulfilled and unrequited. There are some really great comical moments in this book. There is really great comic relief provided by all these myriad of characters. Again, the novel is set in a hotel. There is a steady stream of entertainment from all these relationships and side characters that are happening around you. And so this is a really entertaining read, but you need to set aside the time to really get immersed and enjoy it. So 1970, J.G. Farrell's Troubles. This is the beginning of the Empire trilogy. There are two other books that he wrote. The next book that he wrote, called The Siege of Krishnapur, the next in the series, won the ManBooker Prize in 1973. So we'll be talking about that book pretty soon. But join me for my next video where we'll be talking about In a Free State by V.S. Naipaul. And I hope you'll join me for that one. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'll be reading and reviewing all the ManBooker previous winners this year. At least that's the goal. And so I've created a playlist where I've linked other books that I've discussed, other books that I've read and reviewed. That's linked in the description box down below. So that's Troubles by J.G. Farrell. Let's talk in the comments about it. If you've read this book, I'd love to hear your reaction to the book. If you're new to this author and you're thinking about picking this book up now based on what I said, then I'd love to hear from you about that as well. What about what I said today resonated with you and makes you want to pick up this book? So let's talk in the comments, and until next time, happy reading. Bye.